Well, they're all consistent with climate change, but one can't absolutely say that they're all caused directly by it. They might have happened otherwise, but we now know that they're more than twice as likely, sometimes 5 times as likely to have occurred as a result of the overall rise in global temperatures. And this is the sort of the year-on-year rise, and it happens in the winter as well as in the summer. But we're much more aware of it when it happens in the summer, when we have these extreme conditions.
And there were some reports over the weekend suggesting that these exceptionally hot summers could actually become the norm in the future as far as Europe is concerned.
Well, that's the worry, that in 5, 15, 50 years' time, it might be that we have summers like this all the time. I think what it's bringing down the message is that climate change has costs and consequences, and this might be what we have to get used to.
So I've had this conversation with many people, and most of us are getting very alarmed about climate change. But also there's that feeling of a little bit of helplessness in the sense that a lot of this future can be dictated by corporations, institutions at a country level rather than individuals. What can we do on an individual level to turn things around, or at least to stop things getting worse?
Well, and we're all part of the problem, but we do need the governmental action to help make it easier to make the change. When I drive a car, I go on aeroplanes, so I'm part of the problem as well. But if electric charged cars were cheaper and easier, and there was alternatives, and I think the governments have made the commitment through the Paris Climate Change Convention. So we have got the agreement to do something about it. We just now need to put in the place the mechanisms and the policies to make it happen.
Is any of this reversible though? Or is it just too late in the process for us to start unwinding the process, and the best we can do is stabilize things where they are right now?
We can certainly slow it down. We can avoid the very worst consequences. To reverse climate change, one's got to take very drastic action that people might be very uncomfortable with, but it is theoretically possible. We could take carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere to try and cool down the Earth. We could put aerosols into space and to try and cool down the Earth. So it is possible, but the easiest action is just to say goodbye fossil fuels and just have the most rapid change that we can make, the urgent change, to avoid using the coal, the oil and the natural gas. Switch to renewables as rapidly as possible. So
that is the biggest offender then? You think that is the major catalyst, the major change that needs to be affected?
Undoubtedly, and that's what needs to be done. Countries have agreed to do it, but they've put it off, and they made it in 20, 30 years' time. It needs to be done now.
And as someone who watches this very closely, you're an academic in the field of climate change research, how alarming was it when the US pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords?
It's pretty worrying, and it sets an example for, and unfortunately a very bad example for the rest of the world, but it says that science, either we don't believe science or science doesn't matter. So I think as soon as that can be reversed, the better. For a few years it might not make that much difference, but it means that other countries, China or Europe, will take the lead and the advantage in the technological changes that are necessary. They will retool, they will have different industries, and unfortunately America's then going to be left behind.
And of course it's not just land temperature that's rising, it's also ocean temperature, sea level temperature has also been rising. That should be a serious concern as well. We're seeing last year was one of the most costliest years in terms of hurricanes. Are we expected to see more of that in the coming years? Well,
you mentioned hurricanes, but there's also coral bleaching, that we're losing a lot of the coral reefs. But I think I'm very glad you mentioned oceans, because more than 90% of the extra heat is actually going into the seas and oceans. It might only be raising the temperature by 0.5 degree or 1 degree at the surface, but it's also going deep down into the ocean. That changes ocean circulation patterns. That means we have different weather in the future, and it can be very difficult to predict what the consequences might be.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.